So in this video we're going to be looking at why Anakin didn't need to use the Mortis Nexus in Clone Wars Season 3. Now I have talked about this in the Anakin's Conception video, but this is just going to be a separate video specifically on this little detail, just to put to rest this misconception that Anakin needed to use the Mortis Nexus in Season 3, because it's completely untrue when you have a look at what's going on there. So let's just listen to what the father says here. Let's listen to the instructions that he gives Anakin.
You must now release the guilt and free yourself by choosing.
So he tells Anakin to release his guilt and free himself. And if you haven't watched the video on that yet, how Anakin releases his guilt and frees himself, probably will give a bit of context to this video, so I'd recommend you go and watch that. So he tells him to release his guilt and free himself, and to do that, he has to choose one. So he has to choose between Obi-Wan or Ahsoka. And by choosing one, you are letting go of the other, which of course is the big theme in Star Wars. You know, you have to let go, and that balances you, and you become one with the Force.
Attachment leads to jealousy. The shadow of greed, that is.
What must I do, Master Yoda?
Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose.
That's what the father wants Anakin to do, right? He wants him to free himself, so free that inner power by letting go and becoming one with the Force. But that's different to what Anakin actually does, right? Anakin doesn't do that. He uses the Mortis Nexus. And it's not actually, when you look at the scene, it's not actually the father that tells Anakin to use the Mortis Nexus. The father doesn't even bring up the Mortis Nexus. It's Obi-Wan that says, you know, they're too powerful for us, use the Mortis Nexus, Anakin. You can even see the look on the father's face as he thinks like, that might just work.
Their powers are too strong for us, Anakin! Save Ahsoka! The planet is the Force. Use it.
The Pablo Hidalgo reveals in Clone Wars Secrets reveal in 3D that Anakin actually doesn't do what the father says, that Anakin actually defies the father. So the father tells him to choose one and let go, right? And Secrets revealed in 3D says, rather than make this impossible choice, Anakin taps into the Force that flows so freely on Mortis. The word rather in that sentence reinforces the fact that Anakin tapping into the free energies of Mortis is contrary to what the father wants him to do. So the father doesn't want him to use the Mortis Nexus, right? So where else is he going to pull that power from? And of course, he's freeing himself. So it's that inner power he wants to let out. So it's the power within Anakin is fundamentally the same power that exists on Mortis. You know, drawing from the energies that flow so freely on Mortis, Anakin doesn't need any of that mental mastery. He doesn't need to let go. It's the easy option, right? He doesn't need any of the mental mastery for it. So it's the same power, accessed from a different place, using an easier method. But in the end, you know, either way, it still proves he's the chosen one, because no matter where he drew the power from, he still demonstrated the capacity to handle it all through his body. He was still able to wield that power. So let's go back real quick to the assumption that Anakin does need to use the Mortis Nexus here. So assuming that Anakin did need to use the Mortis Nexus, right, I see people say that, oh, the only way Anakin can be in the realm of the Ones, the only way he can be as powerful as the Ones is if he uses the Mortis Nexus, which, you know, necessitates that Anakin did need to use the Mortis Nexus to beat them. There's no other possible way he could beat them apart from using the Nexus. And there's just too many holes in that to be true, right? Because if we're assuming that Anakin did need to use the Mortis Nexus, then logically the only thing the father would be urging Anakin to do would be to use the Mortis Nexus, right? Which means that when he does use the Mortis Nexus, Anakin would be doing what the father told him to do, right? So he wouldn't be in defiance of the father at all. So I don't know why Pablo Hidalgo would write that in Clone Wars Secrets revealed in 3D if that was the case, but moving on. If Anakin did do what the father said on Mortis, then that means he did let go of his attachments. And that doesn't make sense, right? Anakin in Season 3, being able to let go of all his attachments, isn't that Anakin's core problem throughout all 6 movies? So yeah, by saying that Anakin needed to use the Mortis Nexus, you're indirectly saying that Anakin let go in Season 3, but, you know, never again was he able to do that before or since, you know what I mean? Until, obviously, Return of the Jedi. But yeah, letting go is Anakin's core problem that he's still facing in Revenge of the Sith. You know, Yoda has to tell him, you know, you must train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Anakin struggles with letting go of his attachments. That's Anakin's whole thing. So it's fundamentally incorrect, objectively incorrect, that Anakin let go anywhere prior to Return of the Jedi. Which, you know, completely debunks the whole thing about Anakin needing to use the Mortis Nexus to draw in his full potential. That's complete bollocks. And this is why, contrary to popular belief, not a single source talking about Mortis actually mentions full potential. As I say, it's a complete myth. Anakin just has that power within himself in Season 3, and instead of letting it out, he chooses to pull it from around him instead. And if you want to learn about like when Anakin eventually does let that out, that inner power, I've done a video dedicated entirely to that, how Anakin unlocks his power. So yeah, Anakin didn't need to use the Mortis Nexus in Season 3 of Clone Wars. Well, I mean, he did need to use it because he didn't have the mental mastery to let it out from within himself yet by the time of Season 3. But you get the point. The point is, you know, it's not a case of Anakin being like dramatically weaker than the ones and then using the Nexus to get up to their level. It's a case of Anakin, the Chosen One, being as powerful as the ones. That's the point of the Chosen One. And then having to let it out from within himself. Which, you know, he only does in Revenge of the Sith, and that's what we get a glimpse of in Mortis, of the power that he lets out in Revenge of the Sith versus Dooku. If you want to see more about that, watch my video about how Anakin unlocks his power. And I know everyone's probably going to be thinking, like, oh, you know, if Anakin's that strong, then how is, like, you know, Dooku even a threat to Anakin in Revenge of the Sith? Go watch my video on about what happens when the ones die. Basically, the mortals, you know, sort of take the ones' place, and they exploit their power and take the ones' place, wield their powers. And, you know, that's all a big point to set up these Revenge of the Sith guys, you know, these endgame guys as, like, the biggest, baddest guys, you know, exploiting the powers of the gods. So, just to summarise it real quick. So, people claim that the only possible way for Anakin to tame the ones was using the Mortis Nexus. And if the only possible way for Anakin to possibly defeat the ones in Season 3 was to tap into the Mortis Nexus, then fundamentally, the Father, one way or another, is going to urge Anakin to tap into the Mortis Nexus. That's the Father's goal, right, is to get Anakin to tame the ones. So obviously, he's going to be leading them towards the only way where he can supposedly do it. So for this myth to be true, you'd have to claim that Anakin did what the Father wanted them to do. Because, you know, I mean, we see him use the Mortis Nexus, don't we? So you'd have to be saying that Anakin was doing what the Father wanted them to do, which was let go, which obviously he never fucking done before Return of the Jedi. But yeah, people would have us believe that Anakin let go of all his attachments apparently in Season 3.
What must I do, Master Yoda?
Train yourself to let go.
Duh. I already know this, mate. I'd done it last year on Mortis. Yoda, you fucking sausage. Oh, it's genuinely just incorrect, objectively incorrect, that the only reason Anakin was that strong is because he was using the Mortis Nexus, and the only way he can do this is to use the Mortis Nexus. Not to mention, Pablo Hidalgo literally says that Anakin defies the Father in Clone Wars 3D. And he also tells us that Anakin doing what the Father told him to do was an impossible choice. And fair enough if you haven't seen the quote, as I say. It's from Secret Reveal in 3D. I mean, it's quite a rare book. But you gotta know for the fact that there's people who have showed that quote to and they've just read it and been like, so switch on, boys. Well, yeah, it is actually, it's quite surprising that stuff like this hasn't actually been uncovered in the community, like, at all, really. No one's really talked about Mortis in any depth on YouTube. You know, past the good old, like, Mortis gods represented the light side and the dark side. Yeah, we know that. Don't care about that. We want to know the deep stuff. And, you know, it's actually got to the point where, like, you know, a picture has been built up around these sort of misconceptions, and it's led people down a bunch of paths that aren't necessarily true. You know, it comes down to understanding certain aspects of Star Wars, power levels and shit included. So what I am going to be able to do with this channel is, you know, rebuild up that picture in a more truthful way, consistent with, you know, the truth of Star Wars. You know, what we actually see in the lore instead of all these fan theories that are what everyone currently goes off. Like, you know, Anakin using his full potential on Mortis. Literally nothing says that. But yeah, what these revelations do tell us, a couple of the things anyway, is when the Father asks Anakin to replace him as that balance point, it's because he's the only person who's an equal of the Father himself. There's that Anakin is as powerful as Mortis in Season 3. Mortis and Anakin are the same, pretty much. And if you want to know how the same, obviously, yeah, I've done a video on that, so I'm not going to go into that because it's really complicated. It's an half-an-hour video, but I recommend you go and watch it, because it is interesting, some of the mechanics there. And it's just basically that Mortis and Anakin are both points in the Force where the entire Force converges. But yeah, hopefully we can now put to rest the myth that Anakin needed to use the Mortis Nexus in Season 3. That'll be all on that. If you want to read into this, I've done a blog over on Suspect Insight Forum. You can go read all the shit there, but I'm going to plan on making everything into a video at some point anyway. And if you like this type of stuff, then stick around. And I think next one probably going to be doing something about chaos and the mechanics there, because people have been asking me that. for a while, so I'm going to do that video finally. But yeah, if you like that type of stuff, then stick around.